camera's wobbling. It's 3 o'clock on Wednesday, the 15th of February. And I'm chatting while I write. And eating a couple of Valentine's Day jelly beans. So if anybody wants to pop in and say hi, I'll be here, looking over. Still working on the 14th book of AUD. Most of the way done. Hey Ryan, thanks for joining my Patreon earlier. Appreciate that. It's the funny thing about writing. It's not about just like writing well the first time. It's about writing stuff and then going back and picking apart the sentences to change the words and the structure and the meaning. That's like where the skill portion comes in. You're missing out and feel dumb. I think it's really cool. I mean, I try to give my patrons value over there, but they get to read everything as I write it, basically. Which is kind of like the old AUD of old, where every couple of days I put up a new entry. Writing's not that bad. Your writing is not that bad, right? A lot better than I've seen other people churn out. Hey, Dave. Welcome to watching me write. Is there anything you are super excited about happening in what you're currently writing out? Yeah. AUD 13, Ghosts, the one that just came out, was, I think, a really good book in the series. And I ended it on a really high note and picked up book 14 running, like, at the same speed. And I've got some different stuff happening in this, where it's not just like lather, rinse, repeat, same post-apocalyptic sort of scenarios. This one's a little bit different. So it's really fun to kind of like write different challenges for Adrian and the gang. And I have multiple plot lines that have been running parallel to one another, which is an AUD thing. And they're now starting to like converge, right? It's like in the original series, the Trinity, from book 1, the Trinity is happening. If you go back and look at it, there are like threes that pop up all over the place and things that are happening in conspicuous manners, literally from the beginning of the book. But the concept of the Trinity doesn't kick in until book 3 as like a stated, announced thing. But the Trinity doesn't actually form until book 7, right? So I had all these parallel plot lines running together, and then they converge in book 7. And this is kind of in along a similar vein, where I've had multiple different conversations and creatures and issues that are all sort of skirting each other, and now they're starting to come together. So it's kind of like bringing Lockie into the series, where we know Lockie is raising hell on her own timeline, and then all of a sudden she's able to join Adrian's. So you're at work at your desk, Jason. Hopefully this isn't not safe for work. I really can't promise you anything. So Justin, I don't know how you keep it up. I've been writing the same book for 3 years. Yeah, I don't know either, man. I just gotta churn out some stuff and see what happens. Turn off my hand warmer here. Probably buzzing in the background. Our new office is in the basement here because we sold our house last summer and moved to closer to friends and family and better schools and whatnot. And the house just isn't big enough for us. But we're just renting for a year, and our office is in the basement, and it's fucking cold down here. Oh, sorry, Jason. That probably wasn't safe for work. I told you. Yeah, it's cold, and I'm fine. I can put on a sweater or a sweatshirt, and wear pants, whatever. Wear a hat if I have to, but my hands get cold when I'm typing. I'm sitting in front of a window. I don't know if you can tell, and just enough cold comes through the window to make it it makes my hands really cold. We have a wood stove in the back that I run, but it takes the entire basement before the heat really gets here. So I have a hand warmer on the desk. My wife actually has it. It's really cool. It's like a little ceramic thing, and it has this little disc that heats up, and you can just be like a cat. And it does help. But anyway, Ryan, to answer your question, the plot lines that are coming together in book 14 are a lot of fun to kind of assemble. The issue is you got to do it right, so it's slow going. Is Meadows coming back from 14? Is Carl writing any portion of this book? No, not right now. No. That would require significant adjustments to my timeline. Although Carl does have a book 4 of Lockie written, and if sales stay steady, we'll probably try and publish it. So book 13 helped the Lockie series. It definitely gave it a boost because a lot of people didn't really know about it, despite all the trash talking and advertising and marketing. So when Lockie appeared, people were like, who the hell's this Lockie person? And they went back, and now they're consuming that series, and happy that they didn't miss out. But fingerless gloves with hand warmer pockets. My fingers would still be cold. Curse away. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Mike, thank you for all the comments, Mike, over on Patreon about the thing I showed. I appreciate that kind of feedback. Stuff's really helpful. When people can elaborate on feedback, God, that's so helpful. I like this, but why? What about it do you like? Thanks, Mike. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the right time, and also Mike Firmage is commenting in the comments about something that I shared on Patreon earlier that I'm trying to keep on Patreon, like a shush thing. So I'm sorry if I'm being vague to the rest of you, but Mike, yeah, it's something that's due. Yeah, should we make it sound cryptic and drag people to Patreon? Not on purpose. Otis deserves a girlfriend. Yes, Dave, I think he does. He's probably out there smashing kitties somewhere in Germany. Yeah, so anyway, the Patreon thing, it's the right time, and it's worth doing, I think. And with Kickstarter being an option, I think it's definitely it's an option. So, did you see a time jump happening in 14 or after? Nope, I don't think so. There's like a slowing down of Adrian's movement in book 14, which is kind of like a time jump because he, without giving too much away, he, goes onto land in Germany in Ghosts. And movement at the time of year becomes difficult. And Germany's a big country, and roads aren't plowed. And if he's going to be moving around on foot in Europe, he's just got to wait for winter to pass. So there's like a period in time of him basically having to sit still after what happened in book 13. So. Yes. Welcome, Carl. We were just talking about you. Were your ears ringing? I am hypnotizing people with the click-clack of my keyboard. It's the sound of the stories being created. Isn't it? Yeah. wife. Steve says I have a nice haircut. Fancy haircut. Do you have any new characters brewing that you're excited about putting to paper? Actually, yeah, there's 2 new characters that show up in book 14 that I didn't think were going to be as influential to the story as they're turning out to be. But they're fun to write and they're cool. So that was kind of cool. Yo, Mello's here. Anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in. Ryan's asking a bunch, which I appreciate. That's great. Any updates on other series other than AUD? Reemergence is still paused for now. Diggory 3, I'm going to start writing as soon as I finish AUD 14. Dry Earth I'd like to return to. Colony Lost I'd like to return to. And I have a new post-apocalyptic series brewing. I asked a few months ago, like, what would you like to see if I wrote another story or another post-apocalyptic story? People gave a lot of really good feedback. What do you not want to see? What do you want to see? What do you hate? What do you not, whatever. And a lot of people said they really like the supernatural aspect of AUD, having it not just be like a plague. And a bunch of people also said they wanted me to do like EMP, end of the world scenario, which I don't really have any interest in writing, but the idea of like solar flares and like science or solar flares and technology kind of breaking down abruptly is kind of appealing. So I like had a couple of ideas, and then ironically was out doing some yard work, like shoveling, and I was looking around, and the idea for a possible story just like hit me, and the idea hasn't gone away. And once I have an idea for a premise for a story, the next step is the character. Like, who would this main character be? And I didn't have any ideas. And then one day I was talking to one of my nephews, who is closer to like cousin age, really. And I was talking, and I was like, man, like I could come up with a character that's had like some of the stuff that's happened to him in his life. And then bing, the character happened. Like within a couple hours, I had the kid's backstory and like everything about him and his family. Like it all just starts to like come together, and it gives me like, once I have that dynamic, my brain just like kicks in and starts doing it. So right now it's just notes on some paper, because I need to wrap up what I've got going on right now. But in a couple of years, I think I'll try and write it. Steampunk does need to come back, although steampunk has a pretty strong genre. The whole punk thing, cyberpunk, steampunk, diesel punk, candle punk, those are all like pretty heavy. Ryan, so how much have you fleshed out with Elmoryn? Do you think the new series could take place in that setting? I could write like 300 books in the Elmoryn world, like legitimately. I have so much Elmoryn content written, because I was developing it to be an MMO or a tabletop RPG, so I have mountains of content. Like, it's crazy. Like Excel spreadsheets out the wazoo, the actual books that are written. I have artwork that people have never seen the light of day, maps. Like, if you're on Patreon, my Patreon, I have all the maps posted for Elmoryn there. If you just like search #Elmoryn, every single region of the Elmoryn continent has a detailed map made, like a digital detailed map, a high quality map, so you can like literally see the entire world. You just gotta search it out. Lots of people do cyberpunk. Yeah, the rest of punk is awesome though. Diggory, we'll have another Diggory book out this year, no problem. Yeah, definitely more Diggory soon. But Elmoryn, like I have a love affair with that setting, because it was like I mean, I worked on it for years before I even started writing novels. And I was like passionate, and I was pushing it, and I was like working hours and hours and hours in my spare time, just like putting together this game world and developing an entire game system for it. And the system's fleshed, like it's built. It hasn't been fully play tested. We only did like a few weeks of play testing, but it like withstood the test of, you know, other people playing like those first few weeks. And like a couple of tidbits of the math needed to be tweaked. If I was going to re-release it as a game now, I would go back and make a couple of changes, because I've learned more about like long-term how some of my ideas would have played out. But the world itself is crazy. Like it has hundreds and hundreds of years of history to be explored, and like the fact that like when everyone dies, they become undead, and there's magic that, you know, comes out of all these different sources in the world. It's just a really great setting. Right, the fall, yeah. So Ryan's talking about the world of Elmoryn, the dark fantasy series I wrote, and the history of the world is that, you know, when the first book takes place, The Wrath of the Orphans, it's about 300 years after the fall, which is when the Great Plague wiped out like 90% of the people on Elmoryn. And because everybody on the planet of Elmoryn comes back as undead when they die, if they're not blessed by priests, by, you know, clerics, if their corpse isn't like basically, you know, sanctified, they will come back as a, you know, ravenous, monstrous undead. Great Plague hits, and then there's like hundreds of thousands of undead, and it took like everything they could to basically like to not lose. And what happened was at the time, most of the cities of Elmoryn were kind of concentrated on the western coast of the continent, and they basically got all of the most powerful spellcasters together, and they eradicated the entire third of the continent, and just scorched it to the ground. Like they didn't try to save anything, nothing. They just destroyed it with fire. And the remnant portion of that world is called the Plague Dunes. Like all that's left is like scorched sand and earth. And take care now, Will. Good to see you. And like literally all that's left is like rotten soil and sand and like things that have grown out of the wreckage. But no one really knows what happened. And you know, very quickly in the books you start to realize that the different, you know, power dynamics in the world are all like in cahoots with each other, trying to keep elements of the past like obscured, or like rewriting history to make people not ask questions. So yeah, there's a ton of story in Elmoryn that could be written. It would be super, super fun. I said in one of my last live chats that I'm about to get the audio rights back pretty soon, like this year or next year. And when that happens, I'm going to go back and do like a quick rewrite, fix up some of the problems in the books that I don't like, and then relaunch it with new covers and probably get, you know, new narration and all that jazz. The guy who narrated it, Kevin Stillwell? No, that's not right. I don't even know. I didn't hire him. Audible did. Sign in. He was good. Like, I liked him. Very theatrical. Had a lot of like skill. And it kind of took some getting used to, because, you know, people were going to that book from AUD, and at the time James's narration was like worlds different than this other guy, Kevin Collins. And people were like, I don't like it. But then like you stick with it and like divorce yourself from the idea that you're reading another Adrian book, and then all of a sudden it's like cool and good. I don't know if I would hire him again. I'm not sure what his rate would be. He's on like TV shows and stuff, so, you know, he's a SAG-AFTRA. So he might be out of my price range, but it would be really fun to do it again with him. He was pretty good. Very different from AUD. I liked him. He was really fun. Like, we were on the phone for hours, you know, prepping it, because like a fantasy novel has like some pretty considerable prep required. Like, how do you pronounce this? How do you pronounce that? How do you pronounce this? How do you pronounce that? And he was a lot of fun to talk to. Do you envision this person with a voice? Do these people have British accents? Hey, Mike. The weather balloon thing going on. Maybe a situation. Yeah, I have a really cool idea, Shane. It might be a little too convoluted, and it might feel a little derivative of some stuff that's already out there. So I kind of got to like put a little bit more thought into some of the minutia to make sure that I'm not like ripping anyone off, and just make sure I'm not ripping anyone off. I have no interest in ripping anyone off. I don't want to write something that's already been written by someone else. But occasionally you just come up with an idea that someone else has already done without knowing it. Like, there's another really big post-apocalyptic series entirely unlike mine, and they named their characters Adrian and Cassie. Absolutely unlike my series. Zero, crossover. Do I get pissed? No. They're not trying to profit off me. They're not stealing anything of mine. But there are instances where like you copy something enough that it's like, well, now like I'm just stealing your idea. What did you miss, Mike? I showed my boobs. We talked about Patreon. Mike, am I focusing on novels, or do you still knock out the short stories? I was talking the other night about the best Stephen King movies tended to come out of his short stories. That is true. A lot of his stuff, he gets really long-winded and drawn out, and it's really hard to adapt his novel-length stuff. But his shorts are usually like they hit really hard and they're really good. I wrote a couple of short stories. I have to write another one. There's a magazine that I contributed a short story to that just launched called Double Feature. And the first issue was called Mondo Apocalypto, and I wrote this really cool kind of grim observation on a future where it doesn't come out in the story, but like one group of people won and one group of people didn't, and the people who won control everything about the people who didn't win, and like how that plays out when you're growing up. And it's a pretty heavy-hitting story. It's subtle, but it's dark. And that's in Double Feature, Mondo Apocalypto. And I'm supposed to write a second story for them for like their third issue. You didn't miss much. Mine aren't really that special. They're a little hairy around the nipple, so... Yeah, I'm working. Right now, what you're hearing me type is book 14. And I'm 2/3, 3/4 done, I would say. Hey, Chris. Never managed to get to a live before. Hey, you're here. You did ask a question. Here it is again. What inspired you to write AUD in the style you have? I was writing the story originally for my friend Joe. Privately, I was just going to write him chapters and send it, and I knew it was going to be long because I just wanted to kind of do it as an open-ended thing to share with him. And I thought it would be really cool to just write it as a stream of consciousness journal, because I hadn't really read any books at that point that were written like that. And I originally wrote the story with me as the main character because I was writing the story for my friend, right? So he was reading a story about how I was surviving the apocalypse, and then we decided to put it up on the website. And as soon as we decided to take it public, I like, all right, well, it can't be me. And that's when Adrian was invented. So, a lot of Adrian is me, like the way he talks is a lot of how I talk. And how he acts is a lot of how I act. So it's easy for me to write his journal stuff because I literally just write what comes to mind, because that's basically what he's doing. And his mind is essentially my mind. It slows down when I have to like hit certain notes and like make sure I'm foreshadowing or doing the right kind of stuff like that. But for the most part, it's pretty easy to write his stuff. Am I watching any good shows? I went back to watch The Strain the Guillermo del Toro, Chuck Hogan show. The trilogy of books was really good. The first book was fantastic. The second book was good. And the third book came off the rails for me. But was still overall good. And I'm on the second season, almost up to the third season of The Strain. And it's really good. Like, they're nailing it. And it's great because it's the first 2 seasons are happening like during the beginning of basically a vampire apocalypse, and you see like the incremental spread of it and how people deny it and how people are bribed to look away, and it's like this slow roll end of the world that's happening. And you, the viewer, and the characters that are fighting against it are very, very aware of how bad this could get and how quickly it could go that bad. And you're just like watching these idiots stumble and make bad decisions and not take things seriously, and it's tough, but it's entertaining. It's a good show. Give your flowers while you're still here. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's taken a long time for me to accept the fact that I'm actually a decent writer. I'm not sure a lot of days, but when people reach out and say nice things, it definitely helps. When people connect with the feelings in the book, that's really cool. Like that's really validating. In America or not, Netflix serial The Haunting of Hill House. That is a great show. The Haunting of Hill House. Season 1 was like incredibly good. Season 2 was just good. Season 1 was fantastic. Age of Embers. Didn't do Age of Embers. Imposter Syndrome, our age-old adversary. Very true. Funny thing about Imposter Syndrome is not far from where I live. I live in New Hampshire, right on the border. Like, I'm literally facing south right now. And like, Massachusetts is like 3 minutes in that direction by car. In Mass, every year in the late summer, there's a writers' conference. They call it a camp, and it's a horror writers' conference, and like the heavyweights go to it, and you can sit in a room with them. You can sit on panels. You can do conferences, and it's like a casual thing. And you have to be a writer to go, and you have to have some level of like, I don't want to say success, but like you have to have achieved something to make it in. And I've been able to go for years, and I have not had the guts to go. I have not. And this year, I'm going to try and go in July, and I'm excited. The guest of honor this year is Josh Mallerman, which is the dude who wrote Bird Box. So I haven't met him or really talked to him. I'm friends with him on Facebook, but that doesn't really mean anything. But it'll be nice to sit in. And, the funny thing is I'm friends online and through conventions with many of the writers who go, but I can't. I feel like I don't belong in that room, Like one of the coolest experiences I ever had as a writer was when I did Scares That Care down in Virginia, and we were closing up the convention hall one night. The first night, and Brian Keene, who, if you haven't read any of Brian Keene's books, he's a fantastic horror writer, and he's kind of a linchpin in the horror community. Like, he has a very successful podcast, and he does a lot of stuff for a lot of writers, and he's on the board of Scares That Care, and he's I believe a quality human. And Brian came up to me and he was like, "Hey dude, like, if you want, come hang out with us." Us meaning like the bigger writers at the show. And I was like, and at the time we had the 2 little girls, and they had traveled to the show with us, and like I wasn't about to leave my wife to go, put down a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old alone on the road in a hotel room by herself. So I was like, thank you, but I just really can't. And I made the right decision, but that was very validating that he was like, please, you are welcome to join us. And it would have been nice to just be in that room. Mike Jackson, you touch on religion a lot, and to be honest, I'm struggling with it myself. It's hard to comprehend that one religion right and the others are wrong. I wish Michelle was around so I could talk to her. Yeah. I mentioned before that one of the things that really fascinated me when I was in college was theology. And I myself am not religious in any way. I don't practice any religion really. And when I was in college, I really didn't practice anything. But it was really interesting to learn about faith, right? And like how different people have faith and get through their day, and how they, call upon higher powers, and how that just like informs entire cultures and stuff. So I took like 3 or 4 theology classes, and when I was working on AUD, I said, man, wouldn't it be really cool if I was able to like incorporate some of these different ideas from all these different religions, and like come up with this like interesting take on what faith is and what it means to be a good person. And I think I did a pretty good job with it. It's very meta, and a lot of the people who read the series, it just goes right over their heads. Like, they don't get all the different stuff that I pull in, and that's fine. They still like the series, but the people who, are either religious or spiritual, they pick up on those things, and they talk about how I try and like overlay them, because a lot of different religions are actually very, very similar, and they just differentiate on a couple of different things. And it's really fun to play around with the idea of like, assuming none of the faiths are entirely correct, how do we take the best of all of them and live, robustly? And that's essentially what Adrian is trying to do, right? He's trying to be the best person he possibly can, despite his flaws and his humanity, and rescue a world that will hopefully, live on in his image. Maybe a little less violently, but reliable broadband. Yes. Yeah, before we moved, we got fiber, which was like a game changer. Like, we could all be streaming simultaneously, and it wouldn't block out. Here it's slower, much slower, but still leagues better than what we had for years. And here in the basement, we're pretty far away from the routers, but think I still get like 150 Mbps. The up is really good here though, which helps. So when I'm streaming, my broadcast is still pretty clear. Right now I'm getting 100, 120, 30, 25, 125 down, and then up 35, 40, which is a lot. Like that's more than enough. The old place I was getting like 600 or 700 down, Mbps down, and like 160 up, which is like absurd. I could stream crazy. It's coming through 5 up. You hinted about Shane playing a part in the AUD series. Shane? Man, I have no idea what you're talking about, Mike. I'm gonna need some context. Without spoiling it, tell me what the hell I wrote. Tommy? Tommy's Adrian's gay brother. Is that what you're talking about? To be fair, I wrote a lot of this stuff like 12 years ago, 11 years ago. Well, if you haven't caught up to it, Tommy is in Adrian's March as a full-on character. He has like multiple stories. And he is a significant character in the new books. So handwriting. My monkey ass. That hurts. I clearly have more of an orangutan ass. Glenn and Tommy are both awesome. They're fun to write. I have to be careful though because I tend to start writing them like Adrian. They're not their own characters. They just become like Adrian 2.0. So I have to be very cautious when I write them. Eventually, I thought about when Adrian's March is over, taking all of the stories that have Tommy in it and releasing like a single collection of all those stories so people can just have those so they don't have to pick through 6 books worth of content to find them. So you can just see Tommy's arc all in one book. And then I could write like 5 or 6 more stories to like flesh out parts where we don't hear from him. Which would be, that would be a significant book. He's probably got 70 or 80,000 words of content, which is a full novel. writing a side fiction right now, which is pretty fun. My album. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. You're very kind with your praise. Thank you. Ah, fuck! I dropped it. I lost a jelly bean. Motherfucker. Organ. Okay. What are you doing outside of writing these days? Free time. Let me answer Jason's question first. Jason Reed finds Caucasian. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm working on it right now as we talk. I'm writing book 14. I'm about 2/3 to 3/4 done. And my hope is that I'll have a pre-order up for it sometime in the next couple weeks and release maybe a month after that. So we're probably looking at March, April, something like that, if I keep writing at a decent clip and don't get derailed too much. What am I doing outside of writing these days? In my free time, and I haven't had much the last couple months. December and January have been tough because December we took a vacation for a week, and then we had the kids on vacation for Christmas, so I didn't really get to do much that week. And then in January we all had COVID, which wasn't that bad, relatively speaking. My wife had it worse than the rest of us, and even she was like flu-ish. But the kids were home, and then we tested positive for I think I tested positive for 16 days. And I was symptom free after day 4 or 5. But wearing a mask, and I tried to not go out as much as possible, and the logistics of moving around and getting stuff when you're positive is tough. And I know people who have gotten really, really sick from COVID, and I know people who have died from COVID. So I have a stake in it. I know that it can really mess people up. So we tried to take it seriously. But yeah, that wrecked our entire January. But for what I'm doing in my free time, I'm still working on the dice stuff. I haven't made any custom sets recently, but I'm working on AUD dice, Adrian's dice, for the Kickstarter. So I've been doing some prototyping on different colors and designs and schemes for stuff like that. And I've been playing Age of Sigmar, the fantasy version of 40K, with my friends. Here and there, we play maybe once a month if we're lucky. And then I have a monthly 5th edition D&D game that I play with some friends. We're doing the Rime of the Frost Maiden questline, which is really fun. And then I have a weekly Tuesday night online game that I play with a couple of friends, but we haven't been able to play in 6 weeks for one reason or another. Is Omnibus 3 coming in audio? Eventually. Rights issues make it complicated now. Yeah, we tried, and I'm sure we probably gave it to somebody, because we got it from the kids' school. It was on I forget what day it was, on a Monday or a Tuesday. They said, hey, one of our families tested positive over the weekend, just giving everybody a heads up, in this classroom, and our littlest was in that classroom. And that was Monday, and I think it was Tuesday she started to not feel good, and then Wednesday my wife started to not feel good, and we tested Wednesday morning, and Juniper was positive and my wife was positive, and then it was just a roll. I was the last to get it, and I got it worse than everybody. And then my wife tested negative for 3 days and then got it again. And she got the worst kind that I got. And the second go around, she was really not cool for 3 or 4 days. But, you know, who knows? We hope we didn't give it to anybody, but it's hard. Yeah, for Valentine's Day, my wife's mom got us a little bag of Valentine's Day jelly beans. The Jelly Bellies, which are like the world's finest jelly beans in my opinion. Scary how fast the whole thing spread. Yeah. We took it seriously from the jump because my wife's family is older, and they both have conditions that make them kind of immune compromised. And at the time, I was like, well, it sounds like the flu, whatever, but we're going to play it safe because we don't want to get it and give it to them. And then, the variants started to come out, and then, people really started to get really sick and dying. And, I have a big footprint, right? Because I'm a writer online. I got 3,000 or 4,000 friends on Facebook and social media. So I see a lot of stories. And then it was like I started getting messages from people like, hey, just letting you know, blah, blah, died. What? Like, when did that happen? How? COVID or da-da-da-da. And, I don't remember if you guys know this, but I was working with a TV producer pretty early on in COVID. And we were working on a book, and we were working on developing Adrian's for Hollywood, and he got COVID and died. And it killed the TV stuff that we were working on, and also killed the book that we were working on. I think I got 30 or 40,000 words written in a book that he was going to put out that I can't really do anything with. But a shame, it was like a 3-day thing. He got it on a Friday and died on Monday. Carl will make side stories in the Loki series, like what happened after Devil's Due and before Ghost. Carl's actually in this chat, I think, Jason. So I'll let Carl answer that. But I said earlier that he's got a 4th Loki book written. Yeah, Steve, and he just that was tough. It was really tough. I got a message from someone in his inner circle and was like, dude, Steve's in fucking intensive care right now with COVID, and they say it doesn't look good. And then 6 hours later, he was like, he died. What? He was 45 and healthy. COVID's a lot less scary now because the variants that we have that spread easier aren't as serious, which makes sense, right? Because if you kill your host, you can't spread, right? But if you keep your host alive, then you can spread. So that the variants that are living are the ones that can bounce around without killing their hosts. So lately, I don't think I really know anybody who's any reports of deaths in my circle in months. Some people getting sick. A lot of people talking about getting real sick, and the fatigue. Post-COVID fatigue is a real thing. We still I'll be going along, and then all of a sudden I'll just tank. It's all right, all done for the day. Yeah, it sucks. Hopefully we can, stay vaccinated enough and get enough antibodies, and people can treat it, with respect. A lot of people don't believe in it, but people believe in the flu, and it's basically just a different kind of flu. And tens of thousands of people die from the flu every year. We just don't talk about it. Yeah, really. Yeah, Steve, you have no immune system. You have the immune system of an infant. Yeah, no fun. No fun. If anybody has any other questions, jump in. Feel free to ask. I'm going to get off here pretty soon and start making dinner for the kids. 2/3 of the way through this side fiction, which is good. Cool. Enough stereo, bro. Take care, Mike. You too, Jason. You stay healthy and safe. Hope you didn't get in trouble at work. Legend. Hey, Anthony. Makes you feel any better about your lives. I've only got 6 people right now. I had like 15 earlier, which was cool. Alright, couple more minutes here live. I got this. Oh, nice. New patron. I was telling everybody earlier that I put up a big poll over on my Patreon earlier for the AV Club, which is like the second to highest tier. And you get like more access and stuff, more talks and stuff like that with me. And I put up a poll there that, I needed people's feedback on some stuff, and I think pretty big stuff. And I mentioned it, and like 2 people have signed up for Patreon, which is really cool. I really appreciate it. Patreon is such a big help. I am more interesting than you. People really like the mechanical clicking. Like, the amount of people who comment, like, oh, that's such a cool sound. It's like ASMR, I guess, Like, watch me write. Listen to the soothing clickety-clacks. point. All right, everybody. Thank you for everybody who jumped on live. I'll post this to the page so anyone can come back and watch it. Hopefully you guys found it interesting. It's fun. I like to chat while I write. It gives me focus, oddly enough. Keeps me dialed in. So, ADHD for the win. Message me if you need anything. Don't forget the Tales Omnibus just came out. So if you were looking for a way to read all of those stories on your Kindle, they're now in one file that you can download. It's free on Kindle Unlimited. And I think only like $6 or $7 to buy, which, you know, the stories separately are like 25 or 26. So don't worry about it, Anthony. You don't have to. So if anybody's interested in reading those, that's the way to go. There won't be an audio because the rights are complicated for some of the stories at the beginning. But yeah. And then AUD 14's 2/3, 3/4 done. And hopefully aiming for a March, probably April release. So I'll advise. And everybody have a great day. Talk to you later.